I am happy to welcome you back to session number 2 for the sculpting class. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for submitting all your assignments. I was really happy looking through all of these, and we will talk about them later in the session as well. For those of you who have not done it yet, this is your reminder to upload the assignment in this specific way, which is all 4 screenshots merged into one single PNG image. Please use a gray material for your sculpt and then have the head and feet aligned, which means having all 4 images next to each other and not in a 2x2 cluster, and then have perspective on, and yeah, like I said, a PNG. And I don't need the ZTL file for most sessions, only after session 4 and after session 9, but you will get a specific notification about that one. So just the image for the assignments. But like I said, good job. I hope you had fun with your first sculpting experience. For today, we will learn more about ZBrush, and we will also start our first project that we will continue on during the next session, and then after that we start a new project. And you might have seen some details in the presentation chat already, but we will sculpt Pokemon. Yay! And for your first mission, you can pick from 3 starter Pokemon. Yeah, you're free to choose. I will do the Turtwig one here as a demonstration, but like I said, you can pick whatever camp you feel like you're in. I was always Camp Plant, this is why I'm doing this one. Just so you know, the Chimchar might be a bit more difficult, the Piplup a bit less difficult, so you can pick your own difficulty. For this project, we will do only the sculpt, and we won't do any of these steps. So we only sculpt the character and also do a bit of poly painting. Then for today, we will cover the blockout. How do we block out the characters? And we will cover the topic of extracting, and also what you can do with the gizmo, because it's really powerful and a key tool for bringing the spheres and shapes into the right position. So today you will have the task to pick one of these 3 Pokemon. You will block out the main shapes using the primitives, and you would need to pay attention to the proportions, like try to get them as close as possible to your reference. And then as a homework, you upload a screenshot of your block out, which is front, like in these views, combined to a single image until next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Then regarding the later part of the session, like I will first do a small demonstration, and then for the later part of the session, we will have breakout groups. Now you're group number B, so I will skip to this slide. And when we go to the actual doing part of the session, you will jump into one of these breakout voice chats right below this one. So we have breakout room 1, 2, 3, all the way to 6. And depending on which team you're in, you jump into the corresponding voice chat. So if you're team 5, you go to breakout room 5. If you're team 2, you go to breakout room 2. And I will go through all of the voice chats and then see if you have questions and also give you feedback on your first week's assignment. Any questions about the breakout groups? All right. I also posted a picture of the breakout groups in the presentation chat, so you can look that up when the time is right. With that being said, let's dive into ZBrush, and I'll quickly stop sharing my screen and then reshare again. So before we start with these 3 topics, I will do a quick recap of what we learned last time, and also cover some talk more about Dynamesh, Zero Mesh, and Subdivide, because that one is a difficult topic. First of all, we are greeted in ZBrush as always with our lightbox open, and when I start a new project, I will use the Dynamesh sphere. And here we see our UI pop up, and I can open the sidebar by double clicking here, Now I have everything ready. I will also open the subtool palette because I need this one a lot. And just as a recap for basic navigation, we can do everything with clicking and the Alt key. So if we just simply click, we will rotate. You can see it here with the plane better. Then if I hit Alt and click, I will pan. And if I hit Alt, I click, I release Alt, I can zoom. However, you guys mentioned rightfully so that there's a second way to do navigation in ZBrush, which is all, instead of the left click, you use the right click. So you can do basically everything the same. You use the right click to rotate, right click and Alt to pan, and then right click and Control for zooming. So the right click menu doesn't have the release, and then like it makes it maybe easier to do the to do the zooming. So you can have this option too, to do everything with right click. It was on for this one per default, but so you say it's in the preferences, or which kind of settings did you need to activate it in? Interface or okay. Yeah. So in case that it's not enabled for you guys yet, you can also use this button to get the right click menu, whatever you prefer, basically. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. Then we have, what we also covered is the different brushes. You can get the brush menu by hitting the B key, then you have all your brushes. The favorite ones, at least that I use a lot, are saved here as well. You can click on the brush to activate it, you can sculpt on the sphere, you can invert what you're sculpting with Alt, and then whichever brush you have selected, if you hit the Shift key, you can smooth out, and then whatever brush you have selected, you hit the Control key, you can mask, and there are different masking brushes. So if you press Control, you go to this menu, you can select, for example, the mask lasso, which is great to mask off bigger chunks of your mesh, and I will also use this brush today. Then if we are working, like if we want to add more subtools, we go here to append, and then we can pick whatever shape we like. In this case, a sphere. We need to select it over here to then bring it to a new position. We can use the move, rotate, and scale buttons to bring up the gizmo. And with the gizmo, we can move the activated object. We can scale, we can scale with this one. We can scale along one axis here. We can rotate, and we can obviously move. Then if we want to hide objects, we can do that with the eye icon. We can also delete objects over here. And importantly so, if you have more objects here in the list and it's becoming annoying to switch between them here in the menu, you can also hit Alt and then switch between subtools over here. You can see that it's shifting up here as well. And this is just a quicker way to, sorry, my voice, just a quicker way to switch between the subtools without needing to go over here. And you will see me do this all the time during the class as well. Just Alt and click on the new subtools to switch. And since we continue the... Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. So if I have a mask here and I control and drag outside, so if I control and drag on my mesh, it will mask it, and if I just drag outside, it will remove the mask. Yes, this is possible if you hit the Alt key. So the Alt key can, like with only Control, I do masking. If I hit Control and Alt together, I can subtract from my mask. This works with also the mask pen For example, if I have Control and draw on it, and then Control and Alt, I can remove from it. Alternative would be to invert the mask. So I Control and click outside. This inverts your mask, and then you don't need to, then you don't need to use the Alt key. You can simply draw the black part, and then you invert again. And this is also an option. Or you hit the Alt key, and then you can remove. And yes, if you want to make your mask smoother, you have this option, Blur Mask, or you can also simply click on your mesh. It will also blur your mask. Okay. Before we jump into the topic of creating Pokemons, I want to cover the thing with Dynamesh, Zero Mesh, Subdivide, and when to use it, because it is complicated and it takes some time to wrap your head around it when to use it. I quickly want to go over it again. So when we are sculpting, we have different needs, we as sculptors. First of all, we need to have a topology that is kind of evenly distributed. So if and this, yes, it's okay. So last time when you made lots of changes to your mesh, you realize that you are stretching your polygons, and at some point you might not have enough polygons to continue sculpting on. And we see, all right, we do need even topology everywhere. And if we have really destroyed our mesh, let's do that. We can use the Dynamesh to get even topology again, which enables us to sculpt. So this is why Dynamesh is great. It gives us even topology. And if we're doing concepting phase and we're sculpting messy and we want to just try around with a few shapes, this option is great, right? However, this Dynamesh version will give us also triangles, and the polygons are not following the shape of our mesh. This becomes a bit clearer if I have tube-like shapes. Let's use the move brush, I'll mask off this part of the mesh, and then we will move this away. Now we have very few polygons here, right? So I will use Dynamesh, and now we can see that the Dynamesh topology is not following the shape. And if we want to do some sculpting on it, this one, our edges, like, we cannot sculpt clean detail if our topology is not following the form that we are sculpting in. So the fix for that is the zero mesher, because the zero mesher does exactly what we discussed before. So for concepting, quick and dirty experimenting, we use the Dynamesh. It's fast and super easy to use, and it gives us even topology. And then the zero mesh is for when we are kind of happy with the basic shapes. We're like, all right, yeah, this looks cool. I can see the vision. I want this to be like, I want to refine this one. Then we use the zero mesh. And the zero mesh will pay attention to the shapes that we have and create loop cuts that follow the form. So here you can see it paid attention to the shape, created loops. See here more examples, and here. All right, so this is our low poly version now of the mesh, because we have two more needs. One of them is we need low poly geometry, or like low res geometry, to make big changes to our mesh. So if I pick the move brush, I can make big changes like this, and the transition will be really smooth. All right. In comparison, if I now subdivide my mesh and I have really high resolution and I make the same move, you see my transition is really harsh. One more thing why we need low resolution is because we cannot smooth out shapes easily. So if I want to get rid of these shapes, I'm smoothing. You cannot see really a difference, but I am smoothing, you know? But it's not really changing anything because my mesh is so high. Let's go to a bit lower. You see a bit is happening. And then if I go to my lowest subdivision level, you can see smoothing is actually doing something. And I can also smooth out the transitions here way better and make everything, like, adjust big changes. Okay. And the only problem we have with low resolution geometry is we cannot sculpt details. Who would have thought? If I try to do very detailed scalps, we simply don't have the resolution for it. So, as a recap, we first do the Dynamesh to get the shapes, then we do the ZRemesh to get edges flowing in the right direction where we want to sculpt, and then we do the Subdivide, and we do that with geometry divide here, or Control D, and then we have the subdivision levels that we can switch between, and then quickly the preview updates when you hide this and then show it again. Now we can see we have way more geometry, and also go to the higher levels. We need obviously lots of high geometry to sculpt in nice crisp details. And with every project, we first do a bit of Dynameshing and like a bit of messy working and concepting. And then when we are happy with the big shapes and we're kind of, okay, this is how I want my base mesh to look like, we use the ZRemesh. This will give us this result, and then we will subdivide the mesh, and whenever we want to sculpt in details, we sculpt in the high resolution, and then it might happen that we need to make big changes. For example, I need to smooth this one out, or I need to, I don't know, do this. If I go to the higher subdivision, my changes will still be, like my details will still be there, even though I changed the shapes. If I want to get rid of this one now, I would need to get rid of the details on every subdivision level. All right, I will quickly have a sip of water just so my voice stays with us. Give me a second. All right, so yeah, the differences between Dynamesh, ZRemesh, and subdivisions. At first it sounds like, oh, it's all just messing around and changing topology, but actually all of these have different use cases, and the more you use it, the more you will know when to use what. But just remember, the final state of our project will almost always be that we have a ZRemesh base, because we need the good edge flow, and we will have subdivision levels on it, so that we can sculpt details, but we can also go back to the low resolution option if we want to. Okay. Are there any questions from the top of your head about Dynamesh, ZRemesh, Subdivide, how to do it? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So the Sculptris Pro, because I haven't really dedicated a lot of time to it during the session, it can be found right here at the top. So next to the Edit and Draw button, this one is the Sculptris Pro. If you have this one activated and you select, yeah, it does not work with multiple subdivision levels, so there we go. And okay, there we go. So if you use a brush and you enable it here, it will create topology while you sculpt. This is great for the snake hook. This is why every time you select the snake hook, it will give you this idea, like this pop-up saying, hey, do you want to enable Sculptris Pro? It works really great with this brush. And it really does, because if you want to draw out big shapes, it gives you topology while you go. And the thing is, if you make your brush smaller, you can sculpt smaller details. If you make your brush really big, it will give you a low resolution topology. Wait, let me make it even bigger. There we see it. All right, here we go. What's great about it is you will get topology while you draw out the shapes. And I would also recommend using it when you use the snake hook tool. However, this topology is not good to continue sculpting on it because it consists of a lot of triangles. And now if I would like to do some subdividing with it, so if I subdivide this mesh, you see it's all messy and pointy and I cannot get it smooth actually. Also, if I would not smooth it but do some sculpting on here, it will also create really jagged edges. And the thing is, if we did this kind of work and we used the Snakehook with the Sculptris Pro thing, it would require a zero mesh afterwards or a Dynamesh to get topology to better work with this. So I think delete this one, Dynamesh on. I think the Dynamesh topology works a bit better to the sculpting. Also because the Dynamesh has even resolution, and then with the Sculptris Pro, you have different, like, it will also, by the way, it will also apply to your smooth brush. So if you set your smooth brush really low, it will also give you more topology in one area. And if you make it really high, with a smooth brush, you can then kind of paint topology. However, this topology makes it difficult to sculpt them because it's not even. Like, we have a higher density here and a lower density there. So if you finish with Sculptris Pro, I recommend using the Dynamesh because then your brush will behave in the same way in every area. So if I use the BCB clay buildup now, and I turn off Sculptris Pro, you see it's smooth, like it gets smooth here quicker than it does here, and kind of the details also look different depending on the area. So it gets a bit more messy, I would say. So this is why I recommend using the Dynamesh on top. So then if you do some sculpting, it will be the same everywhere. Kind of. Yes. Does that answer your question? Yes, yes. So, especially for the Snakehook. If you don't use Sculptris Pro with the Snakehook, it looks like this, so really messy, and cleaning that up with a Dynamesh is possible. You can just Dynamesh, but yeah, it's easier to have it on for these really long Snakehook thingies. But other than that, I just have it off. But if you prefer to work with this, I mean, it's your choice. It's fine as well. Like, you can do like the messy concepting phase will always be messy, but if you want to do more, like, if you want to get into the details, so to say, the zero measure with the subdivision levels is what we want to end at. Whatever you do before is really up to you, what you like to do when exploring the shapes. Mm-hmm. It might be because you have the move brush selected. Can that be? Or I feel like with some brushes it's disabled, for example with the move brush, but if you go back to Sculptris, like to Snakehook, then you should have the option to turn it on and off. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Then I will open the reference file. By the way, I have uploaded the references that I'm sharing with this, like in this board. I've uploaded this to the drive. So if you go to presentations and then there is a drive link, under this drive link you will get this PureRef board if you're a PureRef user, or if you don't use PureRef, I have a folder with the reference images zipped up there as well, so that you have these references. Because sculpting from just one image is really hard. So the best case that if you start a new project is you want to gather as many references as you can that are meaningful. Like, don't spam up your Purify, but you want to have references from all the angles so that you know how it looks like from the side view, from the front view, and from the back view, for example. And you also want to have some information about, in this case, very cartoony shapes. How do they translate to 3D? Because that's not always defined, like predefined. So in this case, if we look at the top part, like the brownish part, how it, like, one could say it sits on top of the surface. Other person might say I need to carve in a line, like it was done here, like this is just carved in detail. However, I would say, same with the eye, by the way, like this person interpreted it in this way. However, I would say the eye should be a separate mesh, and then this one should sit on top. So there is a bit of freedom in interpretation. This is also why it's great to look at 3D references, how people are translating it into the 3D space, especially if it's this cartoony fantasy like. And yes, we have different references here. I also drew a bit in these ones already. And like I said, we will do this character. And there are different ways to do the block out. The one that, like the session that you did last time, the sculpt, sorry, that you did last time was you were using the move brush and the clay buildup brush, BCB, to block out the big, like to create shapes from a blob. But if we look at the Pokemon, they have very primitive like shapes. Like the legs, they look like they are just squashed spheres, and then the body as well, and then the head too looks like a sphere. If we would start kind of inflating and making everything from this blob, the transitions would be messy, and it's just easier for this kind of project to start with primitives and use primitives as a base for our sculpt. So this is what we will do, and we will just use the spheres to block out the guy. But this is a question that you would need to ask yourself every time before you start a new project. Like, what is the fastest, easiest way to get to this shape? Like, what trick should I use? Should I maybe start with a primitive? Should I maybe do a block out in Blender? Or in this case, with a shell or the mesh that sits right on top of the surface of the head? We will also learn a new trick how to achieve this real quick. All right. Yes, I can quickly explain that right now. However, we will do the merging. Like today, we will only do the separate objects, and then in the next session, we will actually merge them together. So, but just since you asked, and I want to tell you already how it works, but then we will cover this next session as well. So what we'll do is we have two objects on top of each other. Then we select the one that is on the top. We make sure that both meshes have these two spheres enabled and not accidentally clicked on something else. So these two spheres. Then we select the one that's on the top. We go to merge and then merge down. So it will merge the one down. So we go here, merge, merge down. Then we see they merged into one subtool. So both of them are in one subtool, but they are still separate meshes. Sorry, here they are still separate meshes. So to actually make a transition between them, we have the option to use the Dynamesh over there. And now we can see they are merged together and we can smooth the transition. If we want to have kind of the shape and have them merged together, we can use this workflow. However, there is another one that we will cover next time one more time to make the transitions really sharp, which is if we go back. There we go. If you go to the gizmo and then to the gear icon, and then to remesh by union. This is kind of, the gear icon gives you deformers, and then the remesh by union gives you first a preview of, I don't know, it gives you the preview of how it will look like in the end, but you still need to accept it. So you go to the gear icon again, accept, and then we have merged these two together, but everything about the topology from the two objects stayed the same, so we're not losing any details. In comparison to the Dynamesh, we are kind of losing a bit of details. With this one, everything stays really sharp, also the transition. And then we could continue using the ZRemesher because the transition area is really messy, and with the ZRemesher we can have like a nicer transition. But this workflow, like I said, we will do again next time, but maybe if you want to play with it already, you now have the answer to your question. Yep. All right. So regarding our blockout, if we want to start now, when we think about doing actual characters, we need to always position them in a way that they can be used further in the pipeline correctly. In this case, for a character, it should be above 0 in the z-axis, like if you think in terms of Blender, like above 0 on the ground level, and then it should stay on the ground and have like roughly the size of what, for example, if you do a human, it should be the size of the actual human, for example, 180 centimeters. However, in ZBrush, we don't have this scale that we're used to from Blender or Maya. So to give you a rough estimate, if you would export the sphere to Blender, for example, you would have a sphere in the size of roughly 2 meters. So this is kind of what we're looking at. So if we are creating a character, it usually should be around this size. If we would let's make an experiment, we will add a new sphere, and the second sphere we will make really big. And just imagine we create a character, and this is the first eyeball for the character. There we go. And then we create a body for this character, and the body needs to be even larger. You see where this goes. Suddenly, if we want to use our move brush, the scale is like, we cannot increase the move brush further because this object is just really big. And one more thing, you see that the ground is moving as well, because the ground will always, like the ground is not the ground is a plane that is at the bottom point of your mesh. So if I move my mesh and I update the screen, you see the ground is moving. So this can be confusing about ZBrush at first because the scales are so different. On the other hand, it might feel liberating because you can just concentrate on the sculpt and not concern yourself with the details. However, since we want to create a character that has roughly the correct size that we're going for, we will just, if I just go back, whenever we open the Dynamesh sphere, we already have a sphere that indicates roughly the 2 meters that has the ground right there where we want it. And then if we go to append a new sphere, we can hide the very first sphere and then work on the second one, and our ground will stay over there, and we have like a rough estimate where to put things and where to work from. That much for scale. Then regarding references, yes, go ahead. That sounds really interesting. So, I'm not sure if I understood that correctly. So let's say I have this mesh, okay, and I have a tail, and I have a head, and I have a mouth. Let's do that. So you said with the gizmo something was wrong? Or when you were sculpting with the sculpting brushes? Ah, you mean something like that. I want to sculpt in the face, but I'm kind of rotating around the tail, like right now. Okay, so this is... Yeah. So in this case, what might happen is ZBrush wants to, like, it keeps track of which part of the mesh you last modified. So in this case, I sculpted a bit on the tail, and then if I want to move my camera, it moves around the tail because this is the position that I last modified. So it thinks I want to modify the tail. So if I now switch to the head, it might be difficult to adjust the position here. But usually if you start sculpting on the face, it should start rotating around the face. If this is not the case, sometimes I also have the feeling that it doesn't do that it doesn't do what I want it to do, is to adjust the gizmo position. And we can see, like, while you were while you were sculpting today in this session, you can see if this problem pops up again. But by aligning the gizmo to the correct position, this could be helping with the issue. So sometimes for me, it helps me to bring the gizmo back to the center of the mesh for it to work, like the rotation to work properly. And we will go over the gizmo icons in a second. So let's see if that fixes. Okay. So did it work by like adjusting, like simply touching the face, or was it bringing the gizmo back to the mesh? All right. Yes, but we will definitely make sure that you can properly focus on the area that you are working on. So this is like a key aspect of ZBrush, that you can actually work on the parts that you are currently looking at. Yes, no worries. Okay, so mhm, yes, hmm, yes, you can, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Ah, I see what you mean. It might be that let's do that. This is happening, that you are kind of bending your mesh. This effect, right? Like while moving the gizmo, I'm kind of bending my mesh, or like this. Is that what you're saying? Alright, so this is a functionality that people in ZBrush 2021 will never encounter, but it's actually a feature that they added, but it can be confusing, of course, if you don't know how to fix it. This one can be really useful if you want to make kind of bended shapes, really smooth bended shapes, but if you simply want to move your object, this is so confusing. There is an easy fix, which is the focus shift, and the gizmo in the newer versions have a focus shift too. So if I set the focus shift all the way to -100, it moves exactly as I want it to move, simply just move the entire object. If the focus shift is off, I get this behavior. Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. So regarding PureRef and references, we always want to have references while we're sculpting. And well, this one, I think this poke. Yeah, sure. Hmm. Into a. Uh, Mm-hmm. Could you quickly share your screen and then we can see if we can... Okay, okay. Okay. Like this? Ah, okay. So, yeah, this one means that you have symmetry on. Um, yeah, so, okay, okay. Yeah, no worries. This is important to know too. So, if my gizmo is here in the center, I can move it freely. If I have symmetry activated, I get some weird problems. Let me move it here to the actual center. Like if I have symmetry on and my cursor is in the scene center, I get some weird problems. And then if I have my gizmo, like my object, I turn it off, I moved it a tiny bit, I turn it back on, then I get this sort of stretching. And then if I move back across the center line, I get this kind of mess. So if you want to work with the gizmo, very often if something strange happens, it's just because you have symmetry on. You can turn it off and then everything moves as expected. Yeah. All right. It's great that you guys are asking questions because otherwise you wouldn't be able to follow along. So it's good that we, and so in this way, many people hear about the issues. So in case they encounter them later, they already know the answer to the problem. Right. So one more time, back to Purif. And there are different ways to set up references. And as soon as we have like a T-pose sheet for a character where we want to align the character perfectly to the proportions, we will also learn in session 4 new ways to set up references in ZBrush. But since we're just doing a Pokemon sculpt, I don't want to overcomplicate it and just have my Purif on here on the side. And I will make my Pokemon a bit smaller so that I have space on the screen to work from. And here, Purif has this functionality to become transparent and be as an work as an overlay. So right now it's completely opaque, but if I hit in Purif Control, Shift, and minus, I can change the transparency of it, and then I can pick something like this. Control, Shift, and plus will, on the other hand, make it more opaque. So I just pick something like this, and then I move it here, and then Purif has another functionality which makes it like transparent to the mouse. So if you go Control and T, it says transparent to mouse enabled. So now if I move my objects here, I can, it's simply as if this doesn't exist at all. So I can move and work with my software, and ZBrush, like Purif, won't be triggered by any of it. And if you want to have control over Purif again, you simply click the Purif icon in the taskbar, like mine is on the second monitor. So if I click Purif in the taskbar, just over here, you see it says it's disabled again. So Control T, transparent to mouse enabled. Otherwise, you can hit Control T one more time as well. So this, yeah, maybe the first method is a bit. The control like using Purif, do you have it installed right now? Okay, yeah, okay. So the Purif is a separate program. It's completely free, and the people that are doing it, they're just genius. I know like many people from the industry are using Purif to also organize their files and get reference clusters like this. It's kind of a tiny Miro, and you can download this for free. Like I said, you can donate if you want to, but it's completely free. And but it's like a software that you would need to install to have it on your PC. You will find it if you just type in Purif download in the internet, and then you need to install it. No worries. Okay, so we have our little guy here, and I'll make it that I can't touch Purif, so I will hit Control and T, so it's transparent to my mouse, and then undo the changes I did to the sphere. We can check with the head which direction is facing the front. It's if you hit the Purif icon in the task, like in the in the taskbar below. So right now I have it on my second monitor, the taskbar, but like below here, the Windows taskbar, and then you hit the Purif icon, and then by clicking on it, you should be able to, this happens, and then you should be able to move it again. Did it work? Perfect. Okay, so yes, about the gizmo. There's a lot to talk about the gizmo. I'll have a sip of water before we dive into that. Okay, so we get the gizmo back. Like this view, you will see me like it pops up magically, but all I do is hit the W key and then it snaps to this icon. You can basically use all of these, whatever you prefer. But yeah, I just hit W on the keyboard and then Q to go to draw mode again. With the gizmo we talked about last time, you can rotate. With these ones, you can also rotate free camera. If you do the white circle, then it's not along a specific axis, but along your camera view. Might be dangerous. Like as for now, I think it's best to just work with these ones. If you snap into, with shift, you can snap your view, by the way. If you snap to a like orthogonal view, then I use the white circle as well, because then it's just, I know it's rotating along the perfect axis. And then with shift, you can do snapping. And all of these shortcuts that I'm going to talk about, also the explanation of these icons, are also on the ZBrush cheat sheet that I put in the presentations chat. So don't worry if I talk a bit too fast. Okay, and then yeah, scaling works on these rectangular boxes, so you can scale your mesh. If you hit Alt and then click on this box, it will scale your mesh in every direction except for the one that you have selected. So if I look here from the kind of top view, if I hit Alt and click on this one, I'm scaling in all directions. This is more precise as if I would scale in this direction first and then scale in that direction. If I want to have it even, I click Alt and then click on this one, and then it will, yeah, like this. It will expand in these directions, and we will use that today as well. So Alt and then clicking, it works on every of these. Okay, and it's Control, Shift, and then minus on the keyboard. And then Control, Shift, and plus to make it more opaque. And then I bring it into the position where, like, I usually put it somewhere here in the corner. And then you can hit Control and T to make it transparent to the mouse. And if you want to have control again, you can go to the Purif icon that is in the taskbar. So right now I don't have the taskbar here. It's on my second monitor, but if I click on the Purif icon, I get this message that it's disabled now and I can move this again. Yes, no worries. Okay. Then let's start with blocking out our Pokemon, and while we do so, I tell you a bit more about icons and whatever, just so that we have a bit of a base to work from. Let's see, I forgot what I did to these spheres, so I will just delete them. And we have our base sphere that we haven't touched yet. It's okay. Ah, I think this is then the easiest to use the head mesh here in the corner if you want to snap to views very easily. And also check if you have perspective on. So here it like and then also you can, while you are rotating, you can use shift to snap to the view. So if I rotate a bit and then I use shift, it snaps to this view without using the head. So shift snaps to this view. I release shift so that I can move a tiny bit and then shift. So now it's a back view. Is that what you mean? You mean if you are sculpting like this and then you want to have these brush strokes, but sometimes you hit here and then it rotates? I've never looked into it actually. So basically what you want. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, what I would then do is just rotate my camera slightly to work on like from this position. I mean, I can look into that matter. Let's make myself a note. Hmm. Hmm. So I mean, uh, well, I think for now it's. I mean, while sculpting, like locking the camera might hinder you a bit from seeing the object from all views because you never want to stay too long in just one view. This can very easily deform your mesh. Like sometimes you see people sculpting faces that look like squares. So you basically have the perfect front view. So they do like the perfect, very nice, perfect front view, and everything looks perfectly fine from this view. But if you rotate, you see all the arrows that are happening. This is why while sculpting, you kind of want to rotate a lot actually, and if you would lock too long into one view. Hmm. Like nah, it's okay, it's okay. Like I said, I will look into this and see if there's like a better solution. However, if it's just about accidentally touching the side of the mesh, I would say just rotate slightly, just have like, and then check again from the front. I think that would make like would be the easiest fix without dabbling with any other ZBrush settings. There we go. Okay. Then about the gizmo and the blockouts. This one's hidden. Okay. Yeah. So I will start and block out kind of the body of the guy. Just in this direction, front view could be fine. Squashed. Then we need a head, and adding new objects is about this like pending stuff. So you go to the sphere, we add a new sphere, we check from the side view, move the head here, and this is like a good time to also check with our reference. So after the body is done, we put it somewhere here in the position. We already see our body might be a bit too large to the top, but let's focus, let's fix it maybe. So we go here. And then with the head, we go here, there, not too bad scale-wise. And then we want to like add this bit of volume up here. So for big smooth changes like that, I like to use the move brush. So B and B for the move brush, and then we need to activate symmetry for every new object that we append to the list. And then we just move it up here a bit. Well, this is not the right direction. How about here? Somewhat like this. And then we need to check from, that's what I said, from the front view as well. So I switch to a different reference that I have from the front view, and here I like this one. And we can see, okay, he's a bit too wide, and then the head should be massive. So this one needs to be a bit smaller. Okay, and then the shape of the head should not be this egg shape, but more of a like rounded shape. So we really like once again make the brush really big so we can make these big changes. All right. Then we need some legs too. Let's go here. And the legs look like squashed spheres as well, so we can take one leg, move it to the side. Then we use the trick I told you before about Alt and then clicking this one so you can move that one, make it here, there, smaller, down. And we check for proportions. How are we doing? Okay, so right now it's really big, so I will use Alt and click again to make it smaller. Move it up here. This is good for now. And then from the front view, we have this guy as a reference, but to properly judge this, we would need to see like both of them at the same time. So if we use the mirror and weld, we can copy from left to right. Unless there isn't anything on the left side, then it copies from right to left. And here we can see it's a bit too far away. This one happens if we don't have symmetry on. So we turn on symmetry, bring them closer together, and then maybe rotate a bit to this side. That looks nice. All right, to do the back row of legs, we have many different options actually. So one thing we could do is go here, duplicate, and then we have the legs up there, and then we can just move them to the back. This is one way. The other way that we could do, funnily enough, is if we have this mirror and weld button, which for like just now mirrored everything for us to make it left and right the same, there are buttons on buttons in ZBrush. So if you go to the Z icon, and we hide this X icon, then we can mirror and weld along another axis too. And if we would pick the Y axis, then all right, no, we don't do that now. It makes it more complicated, but with the Z axis, if we just mirror it to the right, then we can see to the back side, then we have our legs duplicated as well. And there is one third way that you could do the legs, which is if we go to the gizmo, this functionality, I use that tons of times, so just so you know it's useful. So if we hit Control and then drag on this arrow, we make a copy of the mesh, but instead of duplicating it, we have everything in the same subtool already. So this makes it really fast. You can also see if you use this method, the first legs will be masked black. So whenever we do the changes, we are only making them to the mesh that we just duplicated. And then we could repeat this process. If you have meshes that repeat multiple times, we can hit Control and then drag on this arrow, and we will make copies as often as we like them. But for this one, this guy only has 4 legs, so we keep it to 4. And then move them inwards a bit. I think that would look nice. Maybe rotate them here. Okay, and now comes the time where we maybe want to make changes to the front mesh and rotate the front mesh, but if we mask off the back area and we rotate, this is kind of not what we wanted. We want to have the gizmo somewhere around these legs, but right now the gizmo is stuck in the back legs. And this is when all of these icons come into play, and where we learn how to adjust the gizmo's location. And this is very important. You will need it a lot. So we will go over these icons. Luckily enough, it's really easy. So I will start with the first gear icon. This one, like I just showed before, gives us this deformer menu, and these are nice to play around with. One of them that you might use is the bend arc. This one's kind of bending. You can bend along different axes like this. And then there's also a taper, which allows you to taper along one axis. And there is also the remesh by union, which I mentioned before. But these ones we will, like, at the moment we don't need them, but for other objects it might be easier to use deformer than trying to do the entire deformation by hand with a move brush. Yeah, we will just accept this one, and then the second one is the pin icon. So the pin icon is something a bit more annoying. I never had like a use case where I actually needed it. But what the pin does is you move your gizmo with your mesh, and then you let go of the gizmo, but the gizmo snaps back to the origin, like to where you left it at. And this one makes it like your gizmo is not following your mesh. Like I said, I never had a real use case for it. So if your gizmo is behaving in a strange way, you might have accidentally clicked on this icon. Let's go back. And then the location icon, on the other hand, is something that you will use a lot. So if I click on this location icon, it says down here what it's doing. It says it goes to the unmasked mesh center. So the front legs are masked and the back legs are not masked. So if I click here, it will jump the gizmo to whatever is not masked right now. You might say, but this is not the center. This is like the center of one leg, but it's not the center of everything that's unmasked. And this is because we have symmetry on. So this is why it treats it differently. If we turn this one off and we click on this location icon, you see it snaps to the actual center of the mesh, of the unmasked mesh. And if I go activate symmetry again, it treats them as separate objects and goes to that unmasked center. However, if we now we know how we can move the gizmo to this position. However, it is still not rotated in the correct way. Let's say it's rotated in some weird way, but it is now in the center of the mesh, but it's not really helpful. This is where the lock icon comes into play. So the lock icon means basically when I move the gizmo, will my mesh follow or not? If I unlock this icon, it means I can freely move my gizmo without my mesh, like they are not attached anymore. If I hit the lock icon again, I can move my gizmo with my mesh. The same happens if I press Alt on my keyboard. You see it temporarily opens it, but if I release Alt, it will close the mesh again. So you can use both, like this one if you feel more comfortable working with the icons, or what I would do always is hit Alt, and then I can move my gizmo freely without this one. Okay, so this one locks it and unlocks it. Then the home button brings the mesh to the mesh, brings the gizmo to the scene center. So there we have it. It moved it to the scene center. In this case, it also moved our mesh with it. So if we go back one step, if we don't want it to bring the mesh with it, just bring the gizmo over there. We can hit this button, then the gizmo will move to the center. It also means the center of left and right. So sometimes you do need this functionality. And then we can hit this one again, so we can move our mesh again. And one very useful last tool here is this one. It's reversing our orientation of the gizmo to be aligned to the axis again. So, sorry. So if I click this one, it moves our mesh as well, but you see the gizmo is perfectly aligned. However, if I unlock first, then I rotate, then it's like aligned, and then I hit the lock again, you see it moved it, like it made it aligned to the axis, but my mesh stayed in the same position. Then I can hit the location button, and if I want to rotate my gizmo to be aligned with my sphere, I can unlock this one, move my gizmo, and then lock it again. And this way, with these icons, we can easily bring our gizmo back into position where we need it. For example, as well, sorry, if we want to rotate not from this pivot point, but from the body, like we can unlock, we move our gizmo, we can also rotate it slightly, we lock again, and now if we rotate, it rotates along this as if this character can move the legs, like so. So really useful. Make him stand a bit like this. And then the last tool that is also up here, but that one's a bit more advanced, so you don't need it right now. But what it does is, right now, if we are moving the gizmo, only the active subtool is moving. With this one, we can move all of them at the same time. So here you see I'm moving everything. The only exception to that is whatever is masked. So if you have something masked off like the back leg, it won't move, but other than that, all the unmasked tools will move with it. So we can do that, for example, right now. So I want to move my character down to be on the floor. For this, I need the axis to be aligned to the top-down axis. So I will not move my mesh, only move my gizmo. Then I will move my entire mesh and my entire character down, and then can hit this one more time. So this is, yeah. But other than that, we probably don't need it right now. Are there any questions regarding these icons and what they do? Okay. Sounds good. And then we will quickly talk about the next steps. We have two more topics. One of them is extracting, the other one are the knife tools, and I'm excited to show you these now. I also like to call them the magic brushes because they are kind of in a special position. So the normal brushes you get by hitting the B key and just select it and then you paint it. But the magic brushes, they are shown if you hit Control, Shift, and then you can select them from up here. So Control alone is masking, Shift alone is smoothing, but Control and Shift, like this super combination, this one will give us this new tool palette, which with the like new set of brushes. And the one that we will talk about today is the knife tools. So these ones, knife, like knife lasso, we will talk about most, or like knife rectangle. However, if you are using ZBrush 2021, then you don't have the knife tools because they released in ZBrush 2022. You will have the trim rectangle tools or trim lasso tools, and they will behave similarly, but not completely the same. But let's cover the knife tools first. So I keep pressing Control and Shift, and now I can select the knife rectangle tool. The knife rectangle tool is cutting away geometry from my mesh like this. And in this case, I want to use the knife rectangle tool to cut away and create the plane of the feet because they are cut off at the bottom, like so. Very easy. Then just to show it to you, the knife lasso is kind of a free-form version of this rectangle tool, so you can cut organic shapes. But for the ground, we want to have the knife rectangle tool, and we can cut away our feet. So now we can reposition our mesh by hitting the transpose multiple. We just move our guy to the bottom. That's it. Okay, then I will show you one use case for the knife lasso, which is the mouth. And I kind of want to have the green part be different to the yellow part, so I want them to be separate meshes. And for this one, I select the head and then Control Shift. Now I have the knife rectangle tool selected. I click here, I select the lasso. And with the lasso, it doesn't matter in which direction you use the brush. So if I go counterclockwise, I'm cutting away. And if I go clockwise, I cut away everything that is outside my selection. So you need to pay attention which direction you're going in. So in this case, I'm cutting away this bottom part and I leave a tiny tip here, and you see it cut away everything nicely here. The difference, so between the trim lasso and the knife lasso, will become visible now. So if you do the same operation with the knife lasso, it will do kind of the same. It will cut away. However, you will have not this clean look, and you will have this transition mesh that is kind of smoothed out. So if you don't have access for the knife tools for the knife lasso, I recommend instead of doing this, you can use the mask lasso, and we will mask off this area, and then we will use the move brush, or like the gizmo, and then we can move everything here, and then we can smooth this part out, and maybe also use the edge polish. If we hit Alt while moving, like while using the edge polish, it will add, like it will fill holes. So if I have a hole here and I hit Alt, it will make it closed. And with this, it is not optimal. Like here we see we get some polygons issues because we don't have a Dynameshed mesh, but we worked with a perfect sphere before. So I go back here. We will use the Dynamesh, so we have even topology and not this star pole. And then we do this one, move it, and then BMV, oops, BMV. And then we can move it up here, we can smooth it. We can also use these ones. Yeah, you need to cheat a bit for this. It needs a bit of extra work. And these knife tools, like ZBrush added them way too late. They are very useful. Alright, but you get the deal. Like, it needs a bit of extra work, but it is possible as well to do that kind of transformation. For now, I will show the workflow with the Dynamesh, the mesh. There we go. And then we will use the knife tool. Knife lasso. There we go. We cut away from our mesh. Looks like this. And then we use the move brush to bring in this one, the front. Look like that. This one's a bit too thin for my taste. Better. Alright. And then I want to have a second mesh for the jaw. And for this one, I will append a sphere, bring the sphere into position. And we can see from this image that it should be a bit... Yes, so symmetry will not be local on your mesh. The symmetry will be if your mesh is in the center of the scene, and it works on that. You get some options in the further, like for local symmetry in the... It is possible in the higher versions, but not in 2021. So yeah, your mesh needs to be in the center of the scene. If your mesh is currently not in the center of the scene and you don't have symmetry, so if I move my mesh accidentally by a few inches, and then I want to work on, for example, sculpting in the eyes, you see it's not doing it on the other side because I moved it like, oh no, because I don't have symmetry active. Let's do it one more time. So yeah, you see it works, like it behaves really weirdly because it tries to do the symmetry, but the mesh is also not the same, and it doesn't work at all when I do something over here. So if this is the case, I will go back to a state where my mesh was kind of symmetrical, or I can keep this one, for example. Then I will deactivate symmetry at first. Then I will bring my gizmo to the mesh center, because roughly the mesh should be symmetrical, like in the center should be kind of the axis where I want to mirror usually. So I unlock so I can move my gizmo without the mesh. Then I click on the location icon. This means it snaps to the center of my mesh. Then I lock again because now I want to move my gizmo with my mesh. And now I hit the home button. The home button is the center. Now the only thing I need to do is align, and I will go to this view because it's orthographic without turning, like without perspective, and I will move my head in this direction. You can also use these arrows and bring it back into position. And now symmetry will work again, but now the mesh is deformed on one side. If I want to keep this one, I can go mirror and weld. If I don't want to have this, I can just hit mirror and then mirror and weld. So whatever is on the left side will be copied on the right side. And then I need to activate symmetry again. Oh, my zebra's really laggy. Okay. Did this... I mean, this was a bit fast, but there will also be a recording of the session. Or did it work for you? Did you encounter this issue? Or was it a general question? Okay, okay. Then, for the jaw, like I said, the jaw needs to extend outside of the head. Like in this image. And we will move this icon, bring it outside, and then we will cut the mesh with the with the tools that we discussed before. So Control, Shift, Knife Lasso, and then I will cut away here. Oh, I think that's the wrong direction. Oh no, never mind. There we go. And then maybe have this cheek up here. There we go. And then we use the move brush to bring, don't turn this one off. And also to bring this part out. Smooth this part. And then there's one interesting thing. Whenever I will hide the mesh so you can see, whenever we use the knife tools, and I show you the wireframe, whatever we cut will have a new color. And these colors are very important in ZBrush. They're called polygroups. These polygroups help us with many different operations. They're kind of, we can tell ZBrush to do specific things if we have two different color meshes. And whenever we use the knife tool, we create one for free, basically. So one thing that we can do is to tell ZRemesher to follow the border of where the two colors meet and create an edge loop that follows this shape. And in this case, it's really handy, not for the cheek because that one will be round, but for the jaw, because right now I have this very nice angle, but I have this very crab topology around it. And if I do smoothing, you see it's, yeah, it gets a bit messy here. So what I will do is I use a ZRemesher, but if I do it by default with this button, it won't pay any attention to the colors. I need to specifically say that it should pay attention to the colors. And this I will do under geometry on the right side, and then I will go to ZRemesher, and I need to keep the groups, the polygroups. I need to enable this one, and then we go to ZRemesh. And now you see it created a border. The groups are still there, and it has a really nice edge loop around that edge. And this border is like I said, there's lots of more functionality with this, but this acts as a feature, so to say. So one more functionality we have with these two groups is we can polish by features. This means it will make everything polish, but the border will be sharp. If I use the regular polish, everything will be polished, but even from this state, I can say polish by features, and if I do this a couple of times, it will bring back the sharp edge. Yeah, but in this case on the cheek I don't need it, but I wanted to have it here on the jaw, so I will polish this part just with a smooth brush as usual and use the move brush. Alright, so to see the different groups, you do that under Poly F here in the top. And in some cases, it might happen to you that you don't see the wireframe because ZBrush has buttons on buttons, and the top left one enables the wireframe, and here the top right enables the color. And you get these different colors if you use the knife tool, for example. There are different ways to do it, but this is like one way. Okay, we are kind of running out of time here because we still need some time for the feedback and all that. There's one last thing that I want to show you. We will repeat this next session too in case this time it's too fast, which is extracting. Like I said, we have this part on the head, which we could interpret to be just a curved line, but in this case we want to have it sit on top of the mesh. And this one will apply to the monkey too, like this one, and also to the Pligloop here, right there. And luckily we have a functionality in ZBrush that allows us to do a mesh, to create a mesh that sits on top of the mesh. So we will do that by going to the head first, because it sits on the head, right? And then we will use the mask brushes. In this case I use the mask lasso. If we mask our mesh, our mask will be limited to the amount of polygons that we have. And if we want to have a cleaner mask, we need a denser mesh. So before we do the masking, we will subdivide. Just one should be enough. Yes, and it gives us a cleaner mask. Okay. So then I will do some masking, right? Oops, sorry. Right there. And then I need to adjust the mask a bit because right now it's not star, so I will go to the mask pen. If I would use the mask lasso right here to create this shape, I am actually masking all the way through the mesh. So if I look at, not this one, you see I also created the mask here at the bottom. So instead of like, if I need to have this kind of view, I'm using the mask pen. And I can create the star. This should be enough. It's sharper. Okay. Then with this one masked, I am navigating to the extracting menu. The extracting menu can be found here in the subtools panel, and then it's almost the last one, the second last one. It's called extracting. This is the process of creating this layer effect. With the thickness slider, I can select like a preferred thickness, and with the extract thing, I get a preview of what my extraction could look like. However, if I update my viewport, this preview is gone because it's not applied yet. It just shows me what this thickness would look like. So if I go a bit higher, you see I'm getting a higher one. I think 0.02 was not too bad actually. So I take this one. Then with the S subdiv slider, I'm getting a smoother result. So if I set it all the way to 0, you see I have lots of edges. If I set it higher, you see I get a smoother result. And then I hit, like if after I hit extract and I like the preview, I hit accept, and then we have a new mesh, this one. And this one is still there, and non-destructively we have created a new mesh that sits right on top of the surface. And this one is really dense. It's probably too dense to properly work on it. So what we will do is create a zero mesh. Here, one more time, we have two different groups, and we want to keep this nice edge. So we make sure in the zero mesher we have the keep groups on, and then we hit zero mesh, and then we get a linear topology that lets us work with it better. In this case, yeah, we can, in this case I want to have like a bit of a round shape. I don't want to have it too sharp, so we can polish this guy a bit. And then one last trick for this session will be polish by features again, and then polish. Nice, okay. Will be to make these pointy, because right now they are kind of smoothed out and roundish, looks like ice cream. And with the regular move brush, we won't have the ability to make them really, really sharp. Like we can try and nudge them a bit. I mean, this would be enough for this Pokemon. I feel like they are a bit roundish in their style language. However, if you want to do pointy stuff, we could go to the brush and then curve and then AccuCurve. And with this selection, our move brush will now behave in a pointy way. So right now, if we move them, it will create a pointy tip. So adjust the settings a bit as well, but with this one we can refine our mesh for the star shape to look a bit better. And of course, if you would take your time to do the mask properly and all that, this would look a bit cleaner, but you get the point. The thing with the move brush and this pointy brush is usually we want to make these large big changes And for this one, we don't need the pointy shape, but we want to have the round shape. So after I finished whatever I was planning to do with it, I will go here, brush, and disable it again. Yeah. All right. And that's it. Do you have any questions about either the knife tools or the extraction tools? Like, this was really rough and fast. We will do that just next time, one more time, so that you have more time to experiment with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a close hole button. Let me just, yeah, I mean, there are different, the trim ones, they will fill the hole, but it's the slice ones that don't. No, the slice ones give us different groups. Wait. The clip ones, not. Which one have you selected? One more time. Just trying to recreate it. Yeah, I mean, with the select rectangle, they are just hidden. But let's just play this game that you have a hole in your mesh, like so. Right now, this topology is hidden, so I need to press delete hidden, so they are actually hidden, actually deleted. And then there is one button in the menu, close holes, and it will fill your topology. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this circle can, for example, also be found in the extract tool that I just showed, and here it's really important, and also with the polishing. So what it does, it kind of makes the effect stronger. So right now, if I, you can see the polish right now is just 0. If I polish, it happens like, oh, let me show you all the way to the right. This is the amount of polish that I get. If I hit the circle, it's hard to see with this. Basically, it amplifies the effect for the polishing or for the polish by features. If it makes it like really strong with the polish by features. It's I think more visible than for the regular polish. Yeah, for the regular polish, it doesn't seem. That's what I'm wondering too. Let's see. So we do a small test. If I close the holes like this. Alright, we have this bend to it, which maybe it tries to fill the shape and keeps in mind the normals that are along the edges, or tries to inflate it a bit. So so often, yeah, so sometimes if you use this mesh a bit too much, like the Sculptris Pro a bit too much, sometimes you get holes in your mesh. Because it changes your topology so quickly. Like, it also cuts off topology, but yeah, sometimes you get, if you use this, sometimes you get some holes in your mesh too. But let's just say I have this hole in my mesh, delete hidden. Then what I will do is either just hit the close holes, which in most cases works fine unless you have like really complex cutouts. What you can also do if you have a tiny hole, you can use the inflate and then try to, like with this hole specifically doesn't work too well, but if you bring it close together like this and then you inflate without this Sculptris Pro. Sometimes if you get the geometry to intersect again, then you do the Dynamesh, then after you did all the inflation, it helps to close the holes again. Yeah. Yeah, if this happens to you ever, that you have a copy of your mesh, that's the Control N to undo all of this. It's that you created a copy of your mesh. This is possible by hitting Shift S, and it's basically great if you want to show your mesh from different angles within one screen, and you can pose your thing. You have Shift S, and you rotate, and then you hit Shift S again. So this is what it's used for, but most of the time you do it not on purpose, like I just did right now because I use the shortcuts a lot. It's just confusing. So Control N, and then you get rid of all of these. And then we will go into the breakout rooms. We might do a teeny tiny bit of overtime if I want to go through all of these. The thing is, do you have Maria's session before this class or do you have it afterwards? Because then we might not be able to go any longer. Because from 2:30, so that's okay. I still want to give you your break. So this feedback session will be really quick, and we'll see if we can just do everyone still today, and then for the next sessions we'll plan it more time. All right. So from the list in the presentations chat, you should be able to find your name, then find your team, and then depending on your team, if you're team 1, you go to breakout room 1, and I will go through the breakout rooms and see you there, and you have time to start working on the task, and I will just jump from voice chat to voice chat. See you guys there.